favorite longevity lifestyle designers. This is Zach here with Secrets of Longevity.com, and I wanted to go in depth into a topic that I was talking about last week, and there were some questions about it, some interest around it, and I wanted to explain myself and my thoughts around this just as an add-on, but I'm not continuing that response from those videos. This is just my own thoughts and my own feelings about this topic, and that is the topic of conscious relationships. And perhaps one of the most major factors of living a long and healthy life is to not be lonely, and it's been shown with many different types of statistical studies that married couples live longer on average, quite a bit longer. It can be anywhere from 6 to 10 years longer than people who are single or never get married or never really have a life partner, you could say, or are engaging in an active relationship. So it's all the positive aspects you can think of in a relationship, in an intimate partnership, that is going to be the cause of bringing about better health. The love aspect, it's just being loved makes you feel good, so feel-good chemicals are going to be good for your immune system, for your entire body. I'm not going to go into this too in-depth because I'd like to get onto some other aspects of how to create a conscious relationship, but the financial support of each other, the emotional support of each other, the bouncing ideas off each other, the social aspect of having someone to interact with, and just all these added up, it makes sense that sharing a space and a life with someone is definitely going to be good for your health. A major cause, in my opinion, for the loss of connection that people feel with an intimate other is the loss of something I'm going to call, or other people call as well, called polarity. Now, if you think of simply a magnet, you have a positive pole and a negative pole, and they attract and stick together, and they'll always be doing that as long as they're opposite poles. Without getting into gender-specific roles here, I want to stay away from that a little bit. I'm going to call one positive, one negative. You could call it yin and yang, and they attract to each other and stick to each other, and it's going to stay like that unless, if you had two magnets, you could imagine, unless you flipped one around so that there was either two negatives, or you flipped the other one around and you had two positives, they're going to be repelling each other. So if you think of the whole human being as a large magnet, and in a way it is, we're electromagnetic beings, but it's a little more complicated than that. There's our personality, there's the way we act in the world, which is going to reflect a magnetic quality or an electric quality. And so this electromagnetism that occurs between two people is going to cause them to either be attracted to each other, or it's going to cause them to be repelled from each other if they happen to be too similar, you could say. I mean, everyone's heard of the classic idea that opposites attract, and it's just sort of a fundamental idea in our culture and other cultures, much in the same way that you are what you eat. We have all these little sayings that no one really knows exactly where they originated from, but they make sense and they're not really disputed. Now, one person I recommend checking out if you want to learn more about polarity is someone named David Deida, and I've put a link below to the first video of many, I believe it's 12 or more parts. The whole DVD of his is online that you can watch. This is on YouTube here, and it's a really interesting perspective on relationships. And it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I personally really like him, and there's other relationship teachers, I guess you could say, that I've listened to that share a similar view. And I'll just go over one of his main points here, that there are 3 stages that people can have as relationships. There's stage 1, 2, and 3. And number 1 is going to be sort of like where everyone was at one time or another. And it's sort of the idea that you could imagine your standard, stereotypical male and female couple from 50, 60, 70 years ago. So you have a woman that's very feminine, you have a man that's very masculine, but almost too much so in each situation. It's so much so to the point that the stereotypical man is shut off from his emotions, he's very rigid, and the woman, on the other hand, in the stereotype, is very flaky, yet very emotional, very feminine, and it's sort of a Barbie and Ken type of idea. But because of this opposites in themselves, they attract. And that's what created the attraction, and that's what, in theory, was the cause of better marriage rates and people staying together in the past. And also, this is the reason why many religions, we could say, have, in some cases, not all cases, definitely not in some of the more current manifestations of religions, but traditional religions have a lot of advocations for very traditional type relationships and marriages, and so they end up working in the sense that they stay together. But in terms of the evolution or the advancement of our being, we're not content with staying just in stage one. At least I personally am not. So at some point in humanity's history, probably around the 60s, people started to explore stage 2 type relationships. And this is when men started to soften a little bit. You could say they started to get in touch with their heart, and women actually started to get a backbone. It was due to the feminist movement. They started to take on those masculine characteristics. And anything I'm going to talk about here can be applied to either gender. So someone who in the past had a lot of yin qualities, or watery qualities we could say, that is typically associated with the feminine. These qualities were very compassionate and motherly, and you could say it was being able to have an open heart and emotions were able to flow. Whereas the masculine or yang qualities were the qualities of the backbone. And in this stage 2 relationship, both men and women in society were beginning to balance both of these qualities in themselves, the yin and the yang, the masculine and feminine. And they were beginning to become more whole, you could say, and they were becoming independent of each other. So in stage 1, they're dependent on each other. They need each other for the reciprocal energy, and that's what creates the attraction. That's the polarity. Yet in stage 2 relationships, or stage 2 ways of being, you start to develop the opposite quality in yourself that you were lacking before. And in my opinion, you become a more whole individual. Yet when you have two people, whether it's a male and a male, a female and a female, or a male and a female, it works for both homosexual as well as heterosexual relationships, by the way. When you have two perfectly balanced people with these qualities in them, they're going to repel each other because they're the same in terms of their personality and being. They might have a bit of polarity in terms of their bodies, but when you're in a relationship with someone, you start to connect with their personality. That's a key one, is the personality actually, but personality, their mind, their emotions, and you're finding that they're clashing with you, or rather they're repelling you. That's because the polarity is gone. And in my opinion, this is definitely a major cause for the lack of ability for people to create longer lasting relationships, and they aren't able to go as deep into relationships as they necessarily have been in the past. Now, getting on to stage 3, there's very few people who are exploring this yet, and this is where stage 2 type people who have already reintegrated themselves to become independent from another person, they've gone on inward and become independent of needing another person to reciprocate whatever energy or quality they're lacking in themselves, so they've become balanced in and of themselves, but they start to want to have a connection with someone just for the sake of the wonderful feelings and qualities that brings into one's life. So what happens here is people choose to consciously bring back polarity while maintaining the inner balance, and this is stage 3. So when you have two people, it doesn't matter their gender, and one takes on the yang role, one takes on the yin role, yet they're already balanced inside with the yin and yang. They understand each other better in terms of the person who's being yin understands what the person is doing in the yang role. And the qualities of the yang role is going to be a leader type quality. It's not sort of the negative qualities you might associate with a masculine energy. A lot of people like to associate negativity with masculinity, but it's really not at all. There's things like leadership, strength, bringing home the bread, so to speak. Any sort of stereotypical male quality you can think of that's fatherly or provider type quality is going to go with the yang quality. And then yin, of course, is the compassionate, the beautiful, the delicate, and the caregiver. And so when you have these polarities brought back together, that's where the spark comes in. There's attraction. Not everyone's going to agree with this. Some people need to explore it more to understand it better. And I encourage you to do that. Again, check out that link. So with that, take care and embrace life without limits.